Warning. This episode contains foul language, mentions of suicide, sexual assault, accidental death, and hitchhiking ghosts.
Hi, Weirdos. You are listening to Keep It Weird, the podcast for all things strange, unusual, magical, thrilling, mysterious, and maybe even a little queasy. And each week we sit down and we chat about something weird. And this week we are continuing on with our Disney series. You heard us talking on our last episode about Walt Disney himself and some of those classic films that he made. But this week is all about the happiest place on Earth. We are headed out to the Disney parks, talking all things bizarre involving the rides, the employees, the visitors, the rumors, the lore, and more. So get that fanny pack, your favorite mouse ears, and your comfiest sneakers, because we have a big journey ahead as we walk through all things theme parks. My name is Lauren, and this is my co-host, Ashley.
Hi, Weirdos.
And Weirdos, guess what?
Guess what?
We finally have a very special guest on the podcast, and it only took 5 years, but we locked him down. I am so happy to introduce you to probably the biggest Disney fanatic you will ever meet, and a lover of all things involving themed entertainment and magical experiences, my sweet husband, Alex Ogle.
Hello.
There he is. I
thank
swear
you.
I exist.
I'm real.
Yeah, I want to know what your listeners that don't know me think of me, because I assume they think I'm like a terrible person,
A real jerk
who doesn't, yeah,
Who doesn't want to come on his wife's podcast?
who doesn't want to come, and
Alex works a real boy job.
He does. He is a very busy man. He was in Shanghai for 2 months. That's also a nice
and why were you
excuse.
in Shanghai for 2 months?
well, are you ready for my life story?
Yes. Please.
Yes, I am obviously here because, as Lauren said, I am a fan of Disney
Mm-hmm.
and have been like a casual fan of Disney for most of my life.
I was going to say lifetime.
And you could tell me if this is too much, because I've always imagined telling these stories on a podcast, but just didn't expect it to be one about murder and aliens.
A dark
Yes.
podcast? Yeah. We're going to talk about some ghoulies.
But I was the oldest of 3 kids, and when I was 13, my family finally planned our first trip to Disney World.
Snap.
And it was like late for most
Yeah, for a
families.
kid.
Like
Definitely.
my brother
I think I
was
went at 4.
yeah.
Yeah.
My brother was probably how old is he? 8 or 9 at the time.
I know. I don't remember how much
Lauren
younger
knows
he is.
his birthday more than I do.
I keep
Matt,
the
no,
family
I know,
calendar.
I know what it
Matt, I
is.
swear I know your
swear.
birthday.
Matt, I love
I
you.
swear I know how old you are.
But yeah, so we went to Borders, and this was like before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Borders, and they were like, Alex, you're the oldest. We're going to buy the planning guide for the trip,
Mm-hmm.
the book, and you're going to read
It's
it.
your job.
And you're going to decide what hotel we're going to stay in. You're going to decide
That is a lot of
what day
responsibility
we go,
for a
where,
13-year-old.
what rides we do, in what order and everything. And I dove into it and like burned through it really quickly and started telling my parents where to spend their money.
He was like, I'm now your financial planner. And if we want to save $30.
In some ways, that experience and the timing that it happened in like even the history of the world was like just reading this book was the only way I could learn about what Disney World was going to be like and what these rides were going to be like. So in my mind, my imagination just got to kind of fill in the gaps of between what was written, or like imagine, okay, like you ride a rocket into space. Like,
Right.
what does
It's like,
that
excuse
mean?
me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like I kind of imagined the greatest thing in every case. And then we went to Disney World and had an awesome trip and a great time going on everything and doing everything. And in some cases, things like lived up to my expectations. In some cases, things didn't. In some cases, it exceeded my expectations.
In
but
some
it was
cases,
still...
you were like, "What the fuck was a small world
this
all
is gonna be
about?" That
much
was kind of
better.
creepy.
Yeah. Well, and I think like it was just cool to first like interact with all of those stories and imagine those things in that way, and like then kind of set me on this path of wanting to know more about how these things are made. For a while growing up, I thought like maybe I'll be an animator, and that was cool. But then I really like honed in on the idea of like creating experiences like this and telling stories that entertain people and move people. And that basically like from then on kind of defined all of my
choices.
Basically.
Where you are in your career.
And in
who
like
you are.
in 13, 14, right in the early 2000s, that was like the height of my like Disney obsession phase. Like Lauren would
I called
say
you a fanatic, but
it's never ended.
Yeah. I can imagine
Lauren
you
would
were
say
a little
it's
more
still
intense.
happening?
Yeah, back in the day. But yes, I
Yeah.
would say it's still happening
was
for a bit.
the message boards.
Oh boy.
were
Message
the
boards.
way, yeah.
You were one of those.
Total dweeb. I'm
You're a
obsessed.
geek.
My screen name was
Stop.
Goofster87.
Oh,
Goofster.
classic Disney screen name.
And I still have an
100%.
account on one of the websites
Oh,
that I can
no.
log into Goofster87.
Mine would be Mad Madam Mim 88.
That's nice.
What would yours be?
Oh gosh. I
Think
don't have
fast.
anything clever.
Yours would
Jack
be Bigfoot from
Skellington.
a Goofy movie.
Honestly, yes. Or I would probably
89.
if I had made it back in the day, I would have thought I was cool and been like Roxanne 89 because
Yeah.
I wanted to be like her from a Goofy movie. But anywho,
Anyway.
Nice. So long story short, that led to like, studying design in college and finding my way into different like design and advertising jobs and stuff. I mean, moving to LA was not because of Disneyland.
It was
Certainly,
definitely a
it
perk.
didn't hurt.
Yeah.
yeah.
Didn't hurt that you're an hour's drive from Disneyland.
Right.
Yeah, it was mostly like the fact that was connected to the world of entertainment and telling stories, and that's what I was excited about. And so then finally found my way into a job that does those things.
Mhm.
And after 5 years at this job, mostly doing like advertising and working on car stuff, we finally got hired to do a legit theme park project. And as Lauren mentioned, I spent basically all of COVID up until April working on this Disney fireworks show, part of the team. The NDA that I signed probably doesn't let me tell you more than that. But
But it was in Shanghai.
But it was
Yeah.
in
And it was
Shanghai
for Disney.
for Disney. Yeah, so our fireworks show
So cool.
with projection mapping on the castle opened in April, called Illuminate, and to rave reviews, and everybody was really excited, and it was amazing to be a part of that and to be able to be on site for a month and a half
Yeah.
at Shanghai Disneyland,
Yeah, no shit.
Watching it all come to
sitting in
life.
front of the castle and putting it together. Yeah.
I remember
So
being
cool.
so upset that Lauren didn't tell me, and she was like, I literally couldn't.
I could not
I was-
tell a soul, and it was
I
killing
signed
me.
a contract that said I couldn't tell you where my husband was going.
It was killing me because I feel like everyone was just sort of like, "What's he doing over there?" And I had to be so vague and say it's like an art installation, sort
yeah,
of.
it's for
but
his
then,
job.
yeah, I promise you'll all understand why it's worth it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. You can all look it up on YouTube. Illuminate Shanghai Disneyland. It's awesome.
Yeah. Designed by today's freaking guest.
Well,
Well,
Disney.
okay. Not designed by, helped
Hell,
procure.
Yeah.
He bought the fireworks, ladies and gentlemen. He went out and he purchased all of the fireworks.
That was his
Uh-huh.
job.
That was his job. He was like, is this a bang bang or a twizz?
He was the gatherer.
You know, the bang bangs and the twizz.
gatherer of the lights.
Before we get into the episode and get into the parks, which I'm very excited about, I do have 3 very quick pieces of old business. 1, everyone go watch UFO on Showtime. It's a 4-part documentary series produced by J.J. Abrams, and it's super interesting and really well done. Alex, I think even you will like it.
I actually saw a trailer for it, and I was
I
like,
know.
this looks like my way in.
It's
Right.
super fascinating, and everyone that they interview is like legit people, ex-astronauts,
Right.
Secretary of State, ex-whatever,
Gosh.
and or like witnesses to things like the Phoenix Lights and shit. It's really great.
Can't wait.
So far, I'm on it. I just started episode 3, and there's
Okay.
4 episodes.
So
if
4
episode
could
4
be
sucks-
the one.
Yes.
It could suck, but it could also be the one that they blow it open
Yep.
and
True. And I haven't seen it
you
yet.
haven't seen
Oh,
it.
so we have
And it
no
exists.
idea.
Yeah, so watch the documentary. 2, I don't think we announced it on our show yet, but we have new merch. We have 3 new shirts. They are all motorcycle style with the print on the back. I'm a huge fan of that.
Me too.
I like
Yep.
the pocket logo. That's where it's
Yeah.
at.
I
Yes.
love the pocket
I mean,
logo.
like, look at me right now.
Yeah.
I know you have it going out. We're all wearing.
I really wish that the
shirts with
shirts
something.
actually had a pocket
Yeah.
for everyone's SIGs, because they're motorcycle shirts, so you know you got to put some SIGs in
That's
there.
true.
We don't smoke. One is a Bella in the Witch Elm shirt for all of our true crime fans. We've got a special effects shirt for everyone who's a fan of whiskey and its effects on our speech. And we also have a Thanks Allison shirt for anyone who wants to do some stinky stepping. And finally, 3, I have to apologize for something said on last week's episode because we were working off of extremely outdated information. It turns out Danny Bonaducci is sober and a really fantastic guy who has totally turned his life around and works as a radio DJ at KZOK, a classic rock station in Seattle, and enjoys being a total foodie with his wife of like 10 years, which
She
is
sounds adorable. Honestly.
amazing. We had a listener message us who I'm not going to say her name, but she basically was like, no, Danny's the best and here's why. And I just wanted to say that I'm extremely happy to hear that another child star has wriggled their way out of the slimy hands of
successful for once.
horrible
do you remember,
Hollywood.
Do you remember how he was like on every one of the like the original Look Back series? Like I love the 80s and I love the 90s.
Yeah.
He was like on every one of those and he seemed like such
He seemed
a cool
yeah
guy.
fine, but
Yeah.
I guess by the time they got to the surreal life, it
Yeah,
was
that's when things got out of control.
pretty downhill. But it turns out he turned his life around.
Good
so
for him.
I
And
wanted
thank you for
to
correcting us, listener.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say that I'm sorry for any negative things I said about him. Even if he were still on drugs, it was probably mean. I was just trying to be funny, but now I'm just gonna kick rocks down the road in shame.
Kick rocks in shame. The listener who wrote in was also so kind.
She's
so
one of my
you're not-
favorites, yeah.
You're not a monster, Ashley.
No, but I did want to correct myself
Yes,
for
that is
anyone who wants to know how Danny Bonaducci's doing.
He's killing it.
Now, you listened to last week's episode, and you're basically a Disney expert, which means I know you know everything good and bad about Walt. Did you have any thoughts or insight? We were left pretty, so-so on the subject.
Obviously, I don't have a problem talking about anything that was negative about Walt, and certainly there's plenty to look at. I did want to say that it's really important to look at Walt Disney's life kind of in order sequentially in terms of how things happened in his life. Like Walt Disney kind of didn't have a childhood because his dad was really tough on him, and he had a paper route at age 9 in Kansas City where he and his brother woke up at 3:30 in the morning and had to deliver papers and then go to school and then work again when they got off work, and he did that for like 8 years or something growing up, and that's part of why he idolized his time on the farm in Missouri when he was little. Then that kind of lack of a childhood was something that he strove for and was always looking to create a family environment, and that's what he wanted his studio to be, and that's what it actually was when they were in the trenches in the beginning,
right. When it all started.
When they were making Snow White and doing this crazy thing that nobody believed they could do. And so they're all in it together and kind of following Walt as this amazing storyteller and leader. And then the success of Snow White, as you guys talked about, allowed them to build this amazing new studio in Burbank that Walt envisioned as his utopia.
Yeah.
And wanted it to be a family environment again. But because of the size and just how big the company was getting, it wasn't that. It became corporate immediately. And, the animators resented the things that they had valued before or resented that they couldn't access Walt in the same way. He was becoming so famous. And he really took it personally when the strike happened. Like that was a dagger in his vision of creating this perfect family, and he took it really personally, and that is ultimately what drove him to being so anti-labor and anti-communist. And some people would say in a naive way, without even really knowing what that meant. I think, you could take it either way, but it really was that experience and that what he felt as a betrayal that drove him into these environments where he was super conservative and fighting these people who just wanted to make money and provide for their families. And if you want bad things to say about Walt, hone in on the way that he threw people under the bus that had wronged him and got people blacklisted in Hollywood and ruined people's lives, which I know you did.
We did
talk about.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the Italian woman that played Snow White.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't heard that. That was really sad. But yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. It's sort of like a serial killer. Walt Disney's like a serial killer where
we're going to stand by that.
When you have a childhood like that, you're either going to grow up to be a curmudgeon-y fuck or you're going to create a theme park for children. You know what I mean? Like you're either when you have a childhood where like you don't have that childhood or you get abused or you get whatever, like you grow up to either become an abuser.
Yeah. Or to be the most driven,
become a Scrooge,
crazy.
or you go to the opposite end where you're just like, I want fun, I want family.
The first thing that you guys talked about last week was, or one of the first things you brought up was Art Babbitt mentioning that Walt went to the American
what's
Bund
that all about?
meeting. So I don't know exactly what it's about, but all I will say about that is that it hasn't been corroborated by any other source. And the best example of that is like 10 years ago, there's a biography about Walt Disney written by an author called Neil Gabler. And most people think it's like the most comprehensive, well-reported, well-researched biography ever about Walt. And it was not condoned by Disney, the Disney company or the Disney family at the time. So it like definitely has a lot of warts and stuff. And it mentions the Art Babbitt quote.
Yeah.
But he says he didn't find anything else to back it up.
Could have just said that because he was mad.
Yeah, so he has to assume that it wasn't real. Walt Disney kept detailed notes on his daily schedules.
Yeah.
It was never in
there.
It
was never in there. But ultimately he did
hasn't been substantiated.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too about a lot of the Walt stuff where you're asking, was he racist, was he anti-Semitic, was he sexist? And it's like, here's the problem, I wasn't there and I have no idea.
Yeah.
And
so much of it is rumors.
None of it is documented. Like there's been no quote that you could pull. There's been there's a lot of it's just one person said this, one person said that, and another person said something completely different. So it's really hard to be like, I know because I feel like it.
I'm mad, so this is the truth. But also the thing that we all came to the conclusion of with Art Babbitt was like, his quote kind of sucked because the reason he saw Walt there was because he was also there. So even if it is true, he threw himself under the bus. So I was sort of like, okay, Art, what were you trying to prove here?
Yeah. And it seems like they had a really weird relationship because he still then came back to work for Disney after the strike and after the
literal fist fight.
A little bit of punching.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can do with that what you
No,
would
I'm
like.
actually interested to know that because when we were talking about it, I was like, what happened? I've never heard this before.
Yeah, because it's just that one Art Babbitt quote. That's all we're going off of. And that's why I kept saying, like, listen, this is the rumor, but take
because that's why I wanted to do just a whole portion on Walt Disney because you always hear these things about him, but I want to know why. What happened to make you say that thing?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why we did that episode. So for anyone, I guess I'll just say it. If anyone is upset that you think that we didn't go hard enough on Walt Disney or we weren't there to try and convince you one way or the other, we were just there to present all the information to you and you can decide whether you think he was XYZ or
come
not.
Come to your own conclusion.
Yeah, come to your own conclusion. I'm not going to go to bat for Walt. I personally have no urge to protect him or his legacy, but I also don't feel like there's sufficient evidence that I've seen yet to like picket in the streets of downtown Disney. And I say that as a woman regarding the allegations of misogyny. I talked to my fiance, who's Jewish, in depth about it. He feels more or less the same. And I've spoken to friends who are Black and Native American, and they're on the fence too. And I think it's perfectly okay to say that you're conflicted, and perfectly okay to say that you hate him and everything he stands for. The good news is it's getting harder because Disney owns a lot. But the good news is you literally never have to buy anything Disney ever again.
Yep.
And you don't have to support him. You can burn his photo. I don't think that's illegal. Yep.
Yeah, light his photo ablaze,
Light
it's
it
fine.
on fire. Do a chant.
Go
I'm
for
with
it.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was all I had to say about the
Yeah.
situation. Okay, let's get into it. Today, Alex is going to start us off by teaching us about some weird-ass rides. You can turn on a ton of podcasts to get a list of Disney hauntings, Disney urban legends. We figured since we have a literal expert on our hands, a creative director of experiential media, we wanted to do a deep dive into some of Disney's strangest rides, how they came to be, and where they went. And then dispersed in between, we'll be telling you about an unsolved Disney cruise mystery and some horrific Disney park deaths. Can I ask you a question?
You may.
There's Disneyland and Disney World in America.
Here we go.
In Disney World, it's nothing bad. In Disney World, I saw a TikTok today of a ride that I guess became Lilo and Stitch, but
I
before
knew
that,
Honey.
because I saw that TikTok, and I
Mama.
guarantee that's on
Mama.
his list because me and Alex
Is
have
it?
connected over it because we both went on the
fantastic.
original as
Okay,
kids.
okay.
Yeah.
Then
I
I'm
saw
done.
that TikTok
I'm
today
done.
too, and
Great.
I was like, Alex will definitely cover this because we
Okay.
both connected on how we wrote it as kids, and it was scary. So anyway,
Yeah, I don't know the ride, so I'm excited to hear about it.
tell us, Alex.
Tell us.
Okay, so and like I said, this is not a quintessential list. And in everything that I say, there may be someone who knows more about all of this stuff than I do.
Yeah, there are people that know everything
Um,
more than me and Lauren.
And
They
so
write
that
in
doesn't
and they
stop
tell
us.
yeah, so I apologize for anything that is not
Included.
And you can let us
accurate.
Also, sometimes we just don't have time.
know. Yeah, we have other things.
I love it when
going
I tell
on.
a story on the show and someone's like, "You didn't even mention this." I'm like, "We have an hour.
Right. We're trying to squeeze all of this.
What do you
in.
want from me?
I know.
You come make the show.
Yeah.
How about you? You come make the show."
You can step in, all right?
Just kidding.
On the list of the weirdest Disney attractions of all time for Keep It Weird listeners, I want to start off with a classic, a Disneyland classic, of course, being Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Mr.
Oh.
Toad's Wild Ride is insane.
I love it, and I feel like I'm on drugs when I'm on it
I've
Yeah.
only been on it once, and I won't go on it again.
because it like ruined your life.
It just was too weird.
It is
Too weird for me.
My gosh, it's one of my
Mhm.
favorites
Mhm.
because it's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's always a long line though, so we don't ride it that much.
Yeah.
it's for the shroomers.
It's for all those people who came on shrooms.
Man,
LSD.
that would be horrifying. But yeah, it was one of the original dark rides in Fantasyland, and in theme park speak, dark ride is a ride that is inside, and you are usually riding around on a vehicle of some kind, and there's like theatrical lighting and movement and music that's all synced up. So
The first time I used the term dark ride, Alex told me he'd never been more attracted to me. That I like remembered that was a theme park.
That's why you guys
term.
are married.
It was a really proud moment.
the ride opened with Disneyland in July of 1955 in Fantasyland. And it was, of course, based on the 1949 animated adaptation of The Wind and the Willows from the movie The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad,
Yeah.
which
Ah.
has
Which
the
has
Headless
Sleepy
Horseman.
Hollow.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
Listen,
So
I'm
good.
in.
We're sold.
Yeah, the Wind and the Willows part is not anywhere
Nope, I
near
never
as famous,
watched
I have no clue. Yeah.
which I don't really understand.
I always
how.
knew it was on my VHS,
Yeah.
and guess what? Never watched it.
Never ever watched.
So this is a joyride in these fiberglass roadsters from the turn of the century, where you go through the story of the Wind and the Willows alongside Mr. Toad, who is just like having the time of his life and doesn't care about
He's shrooming.
anything. He is, yeah.
He's vibing.
And one key part of the ride is that you're constantly going up to doors, like plywood wood doors that
Mhm.
are swinging open at
Yeah.
the last second and make you think you're about to
You're
hit
about to
them,
Yeah.
slam into
Um,
them.
And a
Yeah.
crash.
which is wild. So the crazy part of the ride, as you know, if you've been on it, you drive through the streets of London out of Mr. Toad's mansion, and are going through the countryside, bouncing along. You find your way into a bar.
Usual kid
and,
stuff.
And then find your way into a courtroom where the judge just yells guilty and slams a gavel and
then you go to hell.
I'm not sure what the implication is. Yeah, then you turn
I was like, get
onto-
to the weirdest part.
You turn onto the train tracks. And you go into a dark tunnel and see a light come towards you with the sound of a train blowing a horn, and then there's a crash and an explosion, and suddenly you're in hell.
Yeah.
You died and you went to hell.
You literally go to hell
on a
this
children's ride in Disneyland.
After you're in a bar, after you're in a saloon.
After you're getting drunk.
And here's the thing. He yells guilty, which is like, what? And then there's a train coming at you, and then you go to hell. And it's like, okay, was I guilty and charged with murder? And
you were executed.
I was executed by being hit by a train? What is the story here?
Yeah, what are we meant to believe
Mr.
in that
Toad?
being guilty moment?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a good question. Maybe we need to watch The Wind and the Willows.
That could probably help us a lot in
gonna
trying to
say,
understand.
We're all
this
sitting
Wind of
here
the
like,
Willows
but what
ride.
does it mean? But we all also admitted we didn't watch that.
True.
So,
But there's no hell in the movie.
No, I don't-
so why do we go to
I
hell on
don't
this
know.
ride? I will never understand.
I
but
remember
I mean, I'm
looking
into
it up the one time I wrote it. I remember looking it up, being like, "What happened?
I have to know.
What just happened to me?
Where did I go?
Did I actually die on the ride? Was any of that real?" Turns out it was all of it.
Did we
You
all
did that.
really go to hell, and now we're just like wandering the earth, like not knowing? What's
How do
really
we know we're
happening
not
to
dead
us?
right
I know. I'm like, wait, what really happened, you guys?
But it's like a pretty crazy hell. Like, it's like caves and like red light and all these little dancing demons.
It's
It's hot there, but yeah, then you go past hell. I think you go past another judge, but like this time it's like a demon judge.
who judges you for your life crimes.
Yes.
Your entire life crimes.
And then the ride ends.
And then the ride ends, and
you go back out
you're-
into the sunshine.
Yeah, and then you go back out in the park as if you're supposed to just continue on with your day.
Enjoy, go get a corn dog, and you just sit
Yeah.
there contemplating everything.
Yeah, have fun
in
with
your
your lemon thing. What is it called? Dole Whip.
lemon thing. Oh,
It's
Dole
pineapple.
Whip.
It's
Yes,
pineapple.
Yes. Ugh,
Guys, it's
Dole
pineapple.
Whips are great.
It did also then open 20 years later at Disney World in 1971, but that version of the ride only ran until 1998 because it was replaced by Lauren's homeboy.
Stitch.
No.
Damn.
You said Stitch.
Aerosmith.
No, Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the
Oh,
Pooh. The
I
Winnie
did
the
not
Pooh
know where he was
ride.
going with it. I was like, who? I have a lot of homeboys.
Lauren's homeboy.
No, Winnie the Pooh is my
Lauren's
homeboy.
like Casper,
Easy.
Devon Sawa.
Gosh, I wish there was a Devon Sawa ride. Not even a Casper ride.
Just like Devon
that sounds
Sawa and,
kind of
like,
dirty.
different-
All right.
Different versions
That's,
of Devon
yeah.
Sawa from the
We'll-
90s.
We'll forget that.
Not when I'm here.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's just for me and Ashley chat. Winnie.
Yeah, so
Do love Winnie the Pooh.
replaced it. People were mad when it was announced that Mr. Toad was going to
yeah.
be replaced. But there is a nice little moment in the ride, in the Winnie the Pooh ride, where you see Mr. Toad in one of the rooms. There's
What?
a picture on the wall, and you see Mr. Toad handing the deed to Owl. Is his name Owl
Yeah,
in
it's
Winnie
just
the Pooh?
Owl.
It's just
Yeah.
Owl. But so that's a nice little thing.
That is cute.
That is
He's handing
cute. I
over
like
the
when they
deed.
do that. What a wild ride. Okay, let's change it up a bit. I'm going to tell you my story. I decided to do this morning because I
I'm
wasn't.
excited to find out what you're
I
about
know.
to say.
Oh, yeah, you don't even know.
She
I
kept
don't
it mysterious.
know.
She did tell me earlier, but
So Disney has a film studio, several parks, and, lest we forget, cruise ships.
Oh.
Cruise ships in general are shady AF.
It's true. It's fair.
Since the year 2000, there have been 313 documented cases of people going missing from cruise vessels, with only about 10% of those cases being resolved.
that is not okay.
Not a great
number.
number.
That's so scary.
I mean, if you've been on a cruise, you get it.
You get
Yeah,
it, though.
that is true. Like, you could see how people
What
go
I wouldn't
missing.
do
but,
Like,
to get off this cruise.
definitely just dove
I've
off.
enjoyed my cruise experiences.
Yeah, I've had a
the
good time.
two that I've had in my life. But you're just by railings.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could see
All
how
the
people just fall
time.
off all the time, especially when they're going in their
Especially-
quick motion. Like, you
Mhm.
just get left behind.
Drinking at night,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
by
Who's going to see
I mean,
something
especially
happen
all
to you?
expense paid shit. You know, you're
Yep.
just drinking. You're just getting fed alcohol.
You become
Yeah.
shark food.
And God forbid there's a serial killer on board. And that's kind of a jurisdictional and a legal loophole thing. Much like hotels, they're not legally required to make public every case of a person who goes missing or falls overboard or whatever. So it's estimated by some that only around 15 to 20% of cases are documented and become public. So that's terrifying. And if you need one more reason to stay out of the ocean, that's it. One case did go public, though, and Disney sure wishes it didn't because people have not let it go, even today, and that would be the disappearance of Rebecca Coriam, who was last seen aboard the cruise ship Disney Wonder on my birthday, March 22nd,
Get that.
2011.
Oh, boy.
So at the time, Rebecca was 24 years old. She was from Chester, England, and she worked with all I could find is that she worked with the children on the Disney Wonder cruise ship. So
Okay.
I think that she was one of the daycare people.
Yeah.
You know,
Like,
you can like drop your
the
kids off
parents
and
can go have
booze.
dinner and do whatever. yeah.
Exactly. She was last seen on CCTV footage, like I said, on March 22nd, 2011, around 5:45 a.m. in the crew lounge talking on a phone, like on an internal phone. So like
Okay.
the one in the lounge.
Yeah.
It wasn't a cell phone or anything. She was wearing a men's uniform.
Interesting.
And she was acting visibly distressed. At one point, she like puts her hands over her face. Another point, like a male coworker is seen coming over to like talk to her, comfort her, like almost hugs her in a way.
Okay.
And after that, she hangs up and walks off. She's never seen or heard from ever again. So basically, when she failed to report to her 9 a.m. shift, the Disney staff were alerted to search the ship for her, but to no avail. After that, the U.S. Coast Guard and Mexican Navy were contacted to perform a search of the surrounding ocean, but also came up with nothing. For this next part, you kind of have to understand how cruise ship works, which I kind of knew and now wish I didn't know as much about, but it's called the flag of convenience system. Do you know what this is?
No.
So essentially, it's a business practice where a ship's owner registers a ship in a country that's not of the ship's owners. And to do that, that means you can go by that country's rules. So your safety measures can be lower, your
Okay.
taxes will be lower,
Gotcha.
your operating costs will be lower. It's super shitty.
Yeah.
But every cruise line does it. It's been done
It's
since like the
just the rule.
1920s. That's why you can get an all expense paid cruise for so cheap, because none of these ships are registered in the United States.
Kind of do whatever you want.
The problem happens though is when something like a murder takes place, it's not investigated by the United States authorities.
Oh, right, because you're not.
It's
under their
investigated by
jurisdiction.
whatever country you've registered your ship in.
Oh gosh.
So the Disney Wonder was registered in a tax haven of the Bahamas. So 3 days after Rebecca's disappearance, which is also like you waited 3 days? That
Right.
seems awful. Disney contacted the Royal Bahama Police Force to conduct an investigation. And the RBPF assigned one detective to the case. He was flown out by Disney via private jet to Los Angeles. He met the boat there when it got back to LA from Puerto Vallarta. So waited until it got all the way back to Los
Right.
Angeles.
Oh gosh.
He spent 1 day aboard. He interviewed 6 of the 950 employees and 0 of the 2,000 plus passengers
What?
on her disappearance.
What
Did
a
not speak to a
garbage
because they didn't want any
investigation.
of the passengers to know that anything had happened.
I mean, yeah, but
Which is
like,
a thing on cruise ships.
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, they're
You
trying not
will
to
not
alarm
know.
anybody.
They-
yeah.
They just tell you there's like a medical emergency and you have
Yeah.
to stay in wherever.
Even though
You
usually
had
it's like
stopped
there's a
for,
dead
like-
body, probably.
Yeah, it's probably a dead body.
Probably someone died. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I get, but at the same time, not
What if
great
someone
for a
had
person who,
answers?
disappeared and you need to find them. So Disney was being pretty weird with Rebecca's parents. They referred to it as stalled communication, like they wouldn't call them back. They got the call, I think, from one of her friends on the ship, and then they called Disney, and then Disney it was one of those things where like, we don't have any information, and then they called back and they're like, okay, we still don't have any information, but we want to fly you out, but it has to go through this department, so they're gonna call you. Anyways, it had been like a week, and they were like, where's my daughter? What's going on?
Give us answers, please.
Several days went by. Finally, Disney flew Rebecca's parents, Mike and Anne, out to meet with the detective and the ship's captain in Los Angeles. And to be completely fair to Disney, the parents were obviously in a state of distress, probably incredibly upset. But they did say the whole situation was weird from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, Disney waited days before they flew them out, obviously. They drove them to the ship with a car with blacked-out windows. They were driven onto the boat's back entrance as the guests were unloading off the front, so they were kept out of sight by any guests that could have possibly seen them arrive, which at the same time, it's like, how did the guests don't even know? You didn't even question them. They don't even know why they're here.
So
they're just two
know.
random people. They then took them to a room where they were essentially kept for hours as Disney got everyone who wasn't an employee off the ship. And then they replayed CCTV footage of Rebecca. Not the footage of her on the phone, though. They like played different footage for her of her just like talking to friends and like walking
Having
around
a
the
nice
ship.
time.
And they were like, what's happening? Then the ship's captain came down to talk to the parents, and he said that the captain concluded that Rebecca was swept off of deck number 5 by a rogue wave. And Mike and Anne were then shown deck 5, which was a crew swimming pool area in the front of the ship's bridge that was guarded by 6-foot-high walls. They were taken to the crew quarters and Rebecca's cabin. They were shown a sandal that supposedly belonged to Rebecca that was uncovered on deck 5, which led them to their assessment. They're like, obviously a wave came, took her away, and that's what happened. The next day, the Disney Wonder reloaded and left for its next cruise.
Like, no big deal. Nothing happened.
Loaded
Goodbye.
everyone back up and left, which, like, that's a business. That's what happens with these cruise ships. It doesn't matter who owns the cruise ships. But if you can believe it, her parents left town like, huh?
Yeah.
What
just
happened? Where's our daughter? It wasn't a wave. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Why don't you have CCTV footage?
Right.
They just had so many questions.
More questions than answers.
Yeah. So they hired a private investigator named Roy Ram, who was a former specialist at Scotland Yard, and they uncovered some shit that basically proves that someone knows what happened and no one is talking. And it was not a rogue wave, no matter what anyone says.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, to this day, Disney maintains it was a rogue wave that swept her off the ship on deck 5 sometime between the hours of 6 and 9 a.m., but weather and ocean conditions near Puerto Vallarta, where the ship was located, do not show any indication of stormy weather, much less a rogue wave that would need to be about 100 feet high to sweep someone off the deck and overboard.
I was just going to say, like, everyone on the boat would have been like, man, we really got rocked last night with that 100-foot wave, but no one was saying
it was
that.
like, it's just not possible without really, really horrific weather or some freak accident. But it was 5:45 a.m. Like, people are up.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just like her.
Right.
Then also, Ram investigated the primary piece of physical evidence, which is the CCTV footage of Rebecca on the phone. Disney claimed the CCTV footage was shot inside on deck 5, where she was allegedly swept overboard. But Ram discovered that the footage had been cropped to hide the timestamp and location.
Oh, look at that.
So he demanded to see the original footage. Mm-hmm. He wanted to know where this was and what time it was. And when he found the original footage, he learned that it was actually shot on deck 1, not on deck 5, and nowhere near her supposed accidental death. Copies of the undoctored footage have been denied to the family repeatedly, even to this day. They also investigated the sandal, which is a total fucking joke. The sandal is a joke. First, her family had never seen the shoes before, which, like, doesn't really mean anything. Right. I have shoes that my mom hasn't seen.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not crazy. But it wasn't even the right size and had the name and cabin number of another individual altogether written on the side of it.
God.
So, like,
that's just embarrassing at that point.
Not
like,
fucking hers. A few months after the disappearance, investigative journalist John Ronson of The Guardian set sail on Disney Wonder to try and make sense of her disappearance because the private investigation didn't go really anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from figuring out that, like, no, absolutely, there was no wave. There was no, Sandal isn't hers.
Right.
What's going on? You already cropped one piece of CCTV footage. Can I see the rest?
Yeah.
But anyways, so he talked, this journalist, John Ronson, talked with as many crew members as he could get his hands on. Not a single one was willing to go on the record because they'd lose their job. But off the record, one crew member said, Disney knows exactly what happened. The phone call she had, it was taped. Everything here is taped. There's CCTV everywhere on every surface of this cruise ship. Disney has the tapes. Another crew member responded to John by saying, I don't know anything about it. In fact, it didn't even happen. That's the answer I have to give.
Ooh.
So everyone was pretty convinced that the crew had all been told, like,
yeah, shut your
if
mouth
you talk to
about
anyone about this, your job's
Yeah.
over. So there are a ton of theories as to what happened. Suicide is a really big one, but as usual, all her family and friends are like, don't buy it. She was happy.
She would have never.
But unfortunately, we all know too well that doesn't really mean it didn't happen.
Right.
In 2016, Ram uncovered a ripped pair of shorts with Rebecca's remaining personal effects from her cabin, and he and other law enforcement officials believed it was at least worth investigating, that it could have shown evidence of a sign of struggle on the day of her death or potentially before, because Rebecca had told friends when she was home for a family funeral the year before, in between some cruises, that she was fearful of being raped or sexually assaulted on the ship.
Ooh.
And she never named names, but she said that was something that she was worried about. So whether that's something that was happening a lot, like they didn't get a lot of information out of her.
Oof.
It was also reported that months after her disappearance, her family noticed that there had been activity on her bank account as well as a changed password on her Facebook. So that's weird.
Little twist.
Member of Parliament Chris Matheson, who also helped on the case, said that there is more than sufficient evidence to indicate a crime may well have taken place. So when this came out, there was renewed interest in the case, especially the bank account stuff. Like when people learned about, like, the fact that basically when they came out years later and were like, she might have been murdered. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, all these people became invested in the case. A bunch of people started questioning whether or not it was murder. Media and the public had been reinvested in the crime. And the following year, in 2017, after all this stuff came forward, a woman named Tracy Medley claimed that she was Rebecca's girlfriend and coworker on Disney Wonder. Girlfriend as in, like, dating, lovers, etc.
All right.
And she claims that the night before, her and Rebecca engaged in a threesome with a male boyfriend of hers named Devin.
Devin.
Huh? She also told The Sun that Rebecca had a cocaine problem. It was something no one else in her life was able to corroborate in any way. But of course, that doesn't mean it wasn't true. Like, maybe she did. It just seems kind of weird that all of a sudden this one person was like, she did cocaine. And everyone's like, what?
Are you sure?
Yeah. Also, she says that after the threesome, Rebecca wanted to take a walk. Tracy was drunk and said, I just want to pass out. Rebecca asked her again to come with her. She said no. And Rebecca put on Devin, his clothes, to take a walk. And that does provide a possible insight, to why she was wearing male clothes. Because he was a crew member too.
That there was video of her in a men's clothes. The
Tracy.
Tracy? Yeah, everyone knew. I mean, I don't think
so she still could have made it up, but okay.
Oh, yeah,
That's
she definitely could have made it up.
If she had seen the footage. Not saying that she did make it up. But.
Right. And I tried to find out if the sandal belonged to Tracy or Devin, but I can't find that information
that
anywhere.
Would be interesting.
Well, there are photos of the sandal online with the name and cabin number on the side, but it's illegible.
It's hard to read.
But the name starts with a J.
Yeah.
And that's not Devin or Tracy, so I don't think it was either of them. So according to Tracy, Rebecca had been distraught over their fiery and passionate relationship in the weeks prior. Tracy claims that now, these days, she believes she had climbed over the 6-foot railings of Deck 5 to jump into the ocean. But I'm thinking if you take into account the ripped shorts found in Rebecca's belongings and the comments that she made to her friends about being afraid of sexual assault, it's possible that this threesome wasn't a threesome at all, but like rape, possibly, especially
Sounds more
since
like an
like
attack.
all of a sudden years later she's like, oh yeah, I mean, because you have to remember this is a year after there was renewed interest in the case and
Yeah.
people started thinking it was a murder, so I guarantee people were starting to ask questions again.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she came forward and was like, well, she was my girlfriend, we had a threesome, she was
distraught,
upset, she had a
so,
cocaine problem, there was like all this shit that was like, wait, okay, what?
Where has this information been?
Why
Doesn't
did no
seem
one
like-
else in her life know that she had this huge cocaine
Sounds
problem?
like Tracy's covering her booty.
Yeah.
You don't throw the person who's lost under the bus, like if
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Also, like,
Absolutely.
if you truly think that she killed herself, why even bring that up? Like,
Right.
why even like
That
be
is
like
very
she had a
true.
coke problem? So, anyways, Tracy denies to this day that there was any sort of like attack. And she says that she knows people think something sinister went down, but she never left the room that day after Rebecca left. Rebecca's parents are begging Disney to allow investigators to look into these two past employees and look at more CCTV footage from the ship, but so far everything has been denied.
Mm.
And regardless of what happened, I mean, the whole investigation was fucked up. Like, they broke protocol when the ship refused to turn around to look for Rebecca. Like, the second they found out she was missing, they should have stopped the ship.
Yes, absolutely.
Apparently, the wrong coordinates were initially given to Coast Guards.
Well,
Which sucks, may have led to a search in the wrong area. Also, somehow the ship didn't have any tracking information to release for the day Rebecca disappeared. But so far, publicly hasn't told anyone if the system was faulty or turned off for some reason at the time.
yeah.
The investigation was a crock of shit. There were no forensics done. Not a single passenger was questioned. Even most of her friends on board weren't questioned. One of the last people to see her alive, a coworker who was close to her, told the BBC, "I was never spoken to by any security or police at all. To call this an investigation is an insult." She either killed herself, she either jumped off the railing, whether that was because she had been sexually assaulted or she was in this relationship. It did get confusing because a male was involved and she was upset about that, or she was murdered, or she was thrown off. And the problem is that they have the footage of this.
Right.
There's they said, like, the crew members were like, look around.
Yeah.
There's CCTV
There's
footage
cameras all
everywhere.
over. So they're
And, like,
hiding it.
Yeah, and I get that, like, as a business, like, especially Disney, especially, like, fun, family, blah, 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 you don't want to be like, and you can kill yourself here.
Yeah.
Or, like, and some people get raped.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it, but there's still,
There's family members who are wanting
A
their
dead
closure. Yeah.
yeah, who,
It just feels so mean to
Yeah.
not give them the information.
but so far, nothing. They did sue Disney, and it was settled out of court.
Hmm.
So they were paid
Here's some money.
something. I don't know.
Which,
how
I mean,
much.
good. Like, at least they got something, but still,
Yeah.
just to never know what happened. I don't know. I kind of agree with the theory that maybe she was thrown overboard, mostly because of the ripped shorts. It just seems like someone was, like, attacking her, and then maybe they needed to cover it up so she didn't tell anyone. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I think it sounds very shady.
Yeah, but it is interesting that they would find the ripped shorts in her belongings and
Why
not
didn't they also throw the ripped shorts over? If they were-
exactly
Yeah,
if she was
that's true.
thrown over. Like, it's just
fair.
there's a lot that doesn't quite make sense. But what we pretty much know is that they know,
Yep.
and the whole point is that, like, they know and they won't tell us.
Yeah. Yikes.
So that's my Disney story.
It was so magical and bubbly. Basically, Ashley and Alex tell very similar stories.
Yeah,
The
we
same,
basically
yeah.
told the same stories. Let's get back to some rides, Alex. What do you have on deck for us?
Next up, I want to take you through the journey of what ultimately became the extraterrestrial alien encounter.
This is the one I was talking
That's
about.
the one
Yes.
you're talking about.
That's why
Okay.
I was like, I know what you mean. And it is, he wasn't mispronouncing. Nobody sit there and say, man, Alex really stumbled over his words. It was extraterrestrial. That's like the little joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all caps, the word terror.
It
in the
better
middle
be.
of it. Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah. So this is a ride that was at Disney World's Magic Kingdom in the Tomorrowland area. Now, the ride itself opened in 1995, but we got to start before
Oh,
then.
boy.
We got to
Final
start
ways.
Roswell.
Um,
Roswell,
so
New Mexico.
This is where it all began, guys. The crash.
Actually, Walt Disney died in 1966,
Mhm.
and when he died, it like sent the company into chaos.
Yeah.
Because he was like at the front of all of the things they were doing, pushing them forward. Like everything was his vision, and especially because they were starting to build Disney World and plan Disney World at the time and Epcot. Part of that uncertainty led to just a lot of challenges in the 70s and the 80s for Disney as a whole. And in the early 80s, that was when Ron Miller, who was Walt's son-in-law, became president, which did not smooth out the chaos.
Right.
But Ron Miller should be credited for a lot of cool things in Disney's history and taking some bold chances that in some cases paid off, in some cases didn't. But he was in charge when Tron was created.
Oh, shit.
Which is awesome.
If that is meaningful to you. Also,
Yes.
The Black Cauldron came out, which was a low point, but there were also darker things like Something Wicked This Way Comes is a movie that
We
I've
love
never
it.
seen, but I hope it's on Disney Plus at some point.
You should read the book, Ray Bradbury. It's very, very good.
I love Ray Bradbury, and Ray Bradbury loved
Ray
Disney
Bradbury.
too.
All the good
Return
ones.
to Oz.
Oh gosh.
Wait,
Love
hold
Return
on.
to
Wait,
Oz.
hold on.
This is one of Ashley's like favorite movies
One
of
of
all
my
time,
not
but
I've never seen it.
You've never seen
No,
it?
we've talked about this before
it's so
because
good.
I like that movie now, but it did scare me the first couple times as a kid because it is creepy
Oh, it's
but I
terrifying.
really want Alex to see it because I think you'd really like
Well,
it.
it's actually it's closer to the source material than the
Yeah.
musical
Mhm.
film
Right.
Wizard of Oz because
sure.
it's very dark. I mean, the musical's pretty dark too, but Return
Yeah.
to Oz is dark.
Next
It's so
level.
dark. But yes, okay, I'm a fan.
Yeah. So there were some of those some of those things that didn't land with audiences, but then there was a lot that was bold, like Tron, as I mentioned. He also funded a young Tim Burton and
Love it.
gave him a lot of funding for his original movies, set those seeds for Roger Rabbit, which I know you guys raved about last week.
Love it.
He
It's the best.
started the home video department. He started the Disney Channel
Love this
and
guy.
also started Touchstone Pictures, which was Disney's adult.
Yeah, that was sort of like we want to do stuff
Yeah.
not under the Disney name.
Which I feel like,
Yes, let's get
and
away from the
maybe
kiddie
now
stuff.
people know it, but at one point people didn't like. But Splash was the first of those movies, which
Love
was
Splash.
a hit and
Yeah.
super huge and catapulted Tom Hanks into movie stardom. But like, I don't know if people know that Con Air and The Rock and Armageddon are all Disney movies that
Yeah.
were just under different
different name.
Under a
Yeah.
different name.
under different labels. Yeah. So while he was in charge, there were corporate raiders coming to try and take over. They were threatening to split apart the whole Disney company, so everything would be broken up and go to different bidders. And at that time, Walt Disney's nephew Roy headed up a group that ousted his cousin's brother from being in charge of the company, and at that time brought in Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. And Michael Eisner had been the head of Paramount before coming to Disney, and Frank Wells had been in charge at Warner Brothers. So they were like big Hollywood
Yeah, I
guys
was
who
gonna
knew
say
what they
big
were doing,
fish.
and they were coming in to save Disney, to save the company. And Eisner, with that relationship from being at Paramount Pictures, came in and wanted to turn around Disney and expand its audience and tap into what he knew to make that happen. So Eisner knew nothing about theme parks, but he was really excited to get hands-on. There's a very famous story of him coming to Imagineering with his son and basically like setting his son loose to like go look around and see what his teenage son thought was cool.
Yeah.
And then was basically like,
We're doing that.
build that.
Yeah.
And
Make
so,
a terrifying alien ride.
so
please.
one of the relationships that Eisner had from Paramount was he was in charge of Paramount when Indiana Jones was greenlit.
Ooh.
So he had a relationship with our man
Spielberg.
Yes, Spielberg.
Okay.
But also George Lucas. But
Oh.
Spielberg was really connected, and this is not in my notes, so thank you. But Spielberg was really connected to Universal Studios.
Yes. Jaws.
And so one of the first projects that that Eisner knew he could turn around quickly was a film. So he talked to George Lucas. George Lucas was like, "Oh yeah, okay, this is cool. I'll bring in my friend Francis Ford Coppola."
It's fun.
And George and Francis Ford Coppola worked together. They brought in the most famous person in the world at the time, Michael Jackson.
Oh, shit.
Oh, boy.
And created Captain EO, which we
yes.
all know now.
Is Captain EO still at...
Not anymore.
No, really?
No.
Okay.
It
After
didn't survive
years and years.
the most recent round of Michael Jackson drama, like the HBO.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
the
yeah.
And that
accusations.
documentary
Yeah,
came
that-
out. They
Never
axed
did.
it, which
it
was
came out
smart.
then. But it's a fun movie. That was a big deal. It was a huge success and started this path towards expanding Disney's audience and bringing in legit Hollywood talent, which then also led to Star Tours, the full-on
original
Star Wars, the
Such a
original
good
ride, that kind of was built around the idea of like riding the movies, like
Yeah.
putting you into
Yeah,
the world
which
of
is
these
brilliant,
movies.
which is like all the parks are now.
So smart.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of paved the way.
Exactly. And there was also the Indiana Jones stunt show that opened with Disney MGM Studios in 1989.
That was my shit in
That was the
1990.
best.
So all of those things proved that Disney parks could be more than just Mickey and Minnie and Donald and your
Yeah.
classic
Pooh.
Disney rides.
Yeah.
Good old Pooh.
And inspired Eisner to dub the 90s as the Disney decade and announce all of these projects that were going to revolutionize the world of theme parks and bring in all these new fans. At this time, he was looking for other properties that he could tap into, and he honed in on another 20th Century Fox sci-fi series from the late 70s that was a massive hit, which was
Close Encounters?
Alien is
Oh,
the answer.
shit. Yes, okay.
So the Imagineers set to work trying to come up with ideas related to Alien, and one of the main concepts that really got a lot of play was the idea of being in the gritty environment of the how do you say it? Nostromo?
Nostromo.
Mm-hmm. Nostromo spaceship, and riding around in vehicles shooting aliens and killing
So like
the
the Men in
aliens.
Black ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that really didn't go very far because, again, there were a lot of senior Imagineers who were like, we can't have an R-rated movie
Right.
represented in a Disney
This
theme
isn't gonna
park
fly.
Yeah.
where you're literally shooting aliens.
When you have
like-
guns.
Yeah, and so that got pulled off the development track, but there was still a group of young Imagineers who were going up against those senior people and didn't want to give up. So they had the idea then to take the theme of Alien and adapt it into existing spaces that existed in Disney World and Disneyland in this attraction that was another round opening of Disneyland era ride called Flight to the Moon, Rocket to the Moon, Mission to Mars, where everybody sat in circles in rows around a center
Stage almost.
Yeah, there were screens on the floor and screens on the ceiling that were showing you a look out into outer space as you've blasted off and flew into space
okay.
and went
Was
to
the
the moon
middle,
and went
like,
to
wasn't
Mars.
it the capsule? Like,
Well,
where
later it would become that,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And so Eisner, being the executive that he was, like, loved the idea of being able to utilize something, and you know, it was economical to not have to build everything from scratch. So Alien was back on. We're doing it. But again, the senior, and I'm sorry, there is some back and forth here, but again, those senior people were
Not into it.
Not into it.
Yeah.
So they went behind the other team's back and talked to George Lucas.
Oh, I love the drama.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right? And they said, George, we don't think that Alien should be at Disneyland. Will you come help us convince Eisner and maybe help us develop something else that will mean that we don't do Alien? And George was like, yeah, probably. You're probably right. We shouldn't do that. That was like
That's a really nice impression.
That was a
That was
really
my
loose
loose
story.
I like
impression
where
of
your voice
George
went.
And he was willing to help out. So he came in and they took a lot of the same beats that they were planning for an Alien attraction, but basically changed everything, or just adapted it. So the Wayland Corporation became this company, this futuristic company called XS Tech. And instead of being in the Nostromo, now you were in a galactic convention center where they're showing off their latest technologies. And
Yes.
there's still an alien,
Captive creatures.
but it's not a xenomorph. It's another, still very terrifying, a little bit more kind of
really
insect
scary.
like alien at the center of this ride. And this finally won over Eisner for the long haul. This ride was planned to be part of New Tomorrowlands, where they were going to redo the entire lands of Tomorrowland in both Disneyland and Disney World. And so the ride opened in 1994. The ride itself began with 2 pre-shows where you were welcomed into this galactic convention center. The first one with an alien played by none other than the queen of the catwalk herself, Tyra Banks.
Whoa.
Catwalk, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We also would have accepted Our Lady of Smize.
Uh-huh.
And
Tyra Banks taught everyone how to smize. Yes.
Tyra, we were all believing in you, Banks.
Oh my gosh.
I
yeah,
would
she
accept
freaked
that
out
as
on the
well.
model. Yep. One of the best blow-ups on reality television.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
No, I'm learning.
Yep.
You wouldn't
Slowly
know that.
learning.
Anyways,
There's a lot of star power in this thing. Well, not like star power by
today's standards.
today's
but
standard.
at the time.
But the CEO was played by an actor named Jeffrey Jones, who was...
Is a pedophile.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he is.
Yep.
Famous for
Yikes.
being the principal in Ferris Bueller
Mm-hmm.
and the dad in Beetlejuice.
Betelgeuse.
So he was the CEO who showed up a few times. And then you were brought into this main theater, which, as I mentioned, was stadium seating style, looking at a center area. And where the screens had been, now there's a big tube. And the other main addition to the ride that didn't exist when it was first built was shoulder restraints. So you sat down in these seats, and almost like you're on like a roller coaster
Right.
from the 90s. These shoulder restraints came down so that you couldn't move and held you in place. At this point, you meet 2 employees of XS Tech who are still like green alien but humanoid characters. One of who were played by Kevin Pollak.
I know
who
Kevin Pollak. I
you
love
would
Kevin
know,
Pollak.
and Kathy Najimy.
No way! I love Kathy
Love
Najimy.
her. That's really exciting.
Mary Sanderson from Hocus Pocus,
Yes.
if anyone doesn't know who Kathy Najimy
She's
is.
the best.
She's
She
wonderful.
rides the vacuum cleaner. We all love her.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they're like the people who are kind of running the experiment or running the demonstration. Chairman Clench shows up again, and he's like, okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to teleport myself into the theater right now from, galaxies away. I'm going to transport myself into Tomorrowland. They begin to do this, and as they do it, his beam kind of gets caught in another passing planet or a passing meteor or
As
something.
they
and they're
do.
like, oh no, we're...
Oh no, we put him on
we
an
may
asteroid.
have lost the signal. What's happening? Just boost it. Send him the rest of the way. And of course, during that interaction with the other planet, the beams were crossed and a ferocious alien appears in the tank in the middle of the room.
It's
And
It's so scary.
and yeah, it was like a really impressive animatronic, like lots of crazy movement. Of course, then the alien cracks the glass of the
He
tube,
escapes.
gets out, escapes, and wreaks havoc on the theater. At this point, when he escapes, the lights go completely pitch black.
Of course.
And the main idea of the show is that it's especially utilizing binaural audio. So you've got speakers on either side of your ear, thanks to those
The
shoulder
restraints
that can basically trick you into thinking anything.
Something's breathing on your fucking neck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's when I
Exactly.
started bawling my eyes out.
I was going to say, do they also do the shoulder restraints so that you didn't like literally get up and run away?
Because I think people would have. I probably would have tried.
I saw the video today for the first time.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know anything. I just saw a quick video of the alien. It was just in the tube. And I was like, this is the scariest shit I've ever seen in my
It
entire
was
life.
so scary, and you have to remember, like, this came out in the 90s, like he mentioned. So I went when I was a very little kid, and I was bawling my eyes out because I thought the alien was, like, sitting on my shoulders, and I barely made it through the rest of the ride.
Yeah. And it wasn't just those speakers behind. The shoulder restraints also used hydraulics to drop lower onto you. So they made it feel like the alien was jumping around the
And, like,
theater
landing
and
on-
right
oh,
behind you,
shit.
and then give you some little breath in your ears. At one point in the show that was super creepy, the alien is up in the rafters above the theater. And at that point there's a cast member who actually plays a role in the show and is walking in the rafters carrying a flashlight. And then the screens in the room cut to the night vision feed of the person who's up there trying to put the power back on.
Yeah.
And of course, while that person is up there and while you're getting the night vision feed, the alien steps out of the darkness and you see it on the screen as it lunges at the camera, at the person up there. And when the camera goes black and you hear the screaming of the person up there, blood falls down onto everyone in the theater. So
This
of course,
is insane.
Can you believe that this existed at Magic Kingdom?
Yeah.
No.
yeah.
Like, of all
So,
places, Magic Kingdom.
Of course, it's just warm water, but it lands on you in the moment that this person
Gets
been
murdered,
killed.
brutally
It's just
murdered,
brutally
right in
murdered.
front of your child eyes.
Yep.
But then the alien comes back down in the darkness, lands on your shoulders again, at which point a plasticky rubber tongue pokes out and licks the back of your neck. That was just, it's just in the shoulder restraint, but it's poking
you
out.
just squirm, but you can't go anywhere because you're trapped.
At which point, then Kevin Pollak and Kathy Najimy are
Gone. They left.
no,
Like, we're out of
they're
here.
still there. They're panicking, and there's a lot of screaming, and they're like, "Okay, boost the signal. We gotta boost the power. We'll get him into the tube and then teleport him back." And so they are able to get the animatronic back in the tube. The lights flicker on. You see the alien in the tube, and they're boosting the power. At which point, lights and smoke are going, and they're not able to transport him because the power just causes the alien to explode and
Totally
spray
fine.
you with
Alien
goop again as you hear the sound of thuds of
The Terminator ride doesn't even have the balls
They could
to
never.
spray you with fake warm blood.
Oh man, I love Terminator.
The Terminator ride was fantastic, and that's what I thought of when you were telling this story, because it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You go in and you're at
Skynet.
Skynet.
It was like
Cyberdyne.
Cyberdyne
Cyber.
Systems.
Yeah, there we
You're at
go.
Cyberdyne
Everything's
Systems.
fine.
Yeah, so you're at Cyberdyne Systems.
But yeah, so when the ride opened, it was deemed both too scary
Awesome.
by some people.
Too
Some people
awesome.
some people did think it wasn't scary enough. You might have a hard time believing that. And there is a chance maybe that some of the things I told you were after they retooled it, because after it opened, it was open for, I believe, only about 2 months in test phases before they said, okay, we need to fix this. We need to get it to work. And so the main thing that they changed in that time was the second pre-show. They realized they decided they needed to make the pre-shows scarier so that people realized what they were getting into and bailed out before they got to the scariest part.
Yeah, before
if
they got
were
in and
easily
got
scared.
strapped
Chance
in.
to-
So
get
the second pre-show, the original version of it, actually featured SNL and Simpsons star Phil Hartman
Oh, shit.
as
Love Phil Hartman.
a robot host who was welcoming you and kind of showing you the technology. But when they retooled it, he was replaced by the one and only Tim Curry.
Oh.
If you ever want to make something a little bit creepier,
Tim Curry.
just cast Tim Curry.
Yep.
Yeah,
Ugh,
so
he can do no wrong.
Tim Curry became the robot host in this pre-show. They also learned in the initial tests that people were screaming a lot and screaming over important plot points.
Right.
So nobody
That
had
was
any
me.
idea what
I probably
was
ruined
going
it for
on.
everyone around me.
But the only way you can test something like that out is to have random people who have no idea what they're doing
Yeah.
write it
Yeah.
Right?
over and over and over. Not
That's
over and
how you
over
see.
them, but like, damn, I really missed my chance. I would have loved to ride that.
I think you would have appreciated it. Like, I was just such a scaredy cat as a kid.
Had a divisive reputation for terrifying guests, as we said, and it only ran until 2003 when it was replaced by
Lilo and Stitch.
Lilo
Lilo
and
and
Stitch.
where the alien transported into the theater was Stitch, and
So
what
much
was
lighter.
terrifying became
Adorable.
kind of adorable. The first time we went to Disney World when I was 13, we did not ride it. But I had gone back on, I think, a band trip or something a few years later and was able to ride it right before it was going to close. But again, I psyched myself out and got so scared that when the shoulder restraints came down, I held them up so they couldn't go all the way. So I was still able to
my.
like avoid some of the scariest things. Like
You cheater.
forward. I know. I regret it to this day. It's one of my biggest regrets in life that
Yeah,
I
that you
didn't just
didn't
let
fully
myself
experience.
fully experience
Yeah,
it
you
because
didn't
and I'm somebody
fully
who like
immerse.
values that full experience as much as possible. I'm glad I got to be in that room
Yeah, you got further than I did,
and see it.
and
But
it was
There you
made
go.
for me,
yeah, you're right. You're right.
and I didn't even get to experience it.
I know.
Okay, Roxanne, it's your turn.
Tell us about some Disney deaths. I don't know any
Okay.
of these.
So yeah, we're keep it weird. We have to go a little dark. So as much as we love to go to these magical places in all of the Disney parks, there have unfortunately been some deaths in the park.
And
It's
you
okay.
can skip the one that you
Yeah, I can't.
don't want to tell. Check out our newsletter
Yes.
this month, and we will include a story that is so horrible that
Mhm.
we literally can't tell it.
I
Because
cannot read it on an
Lauren will
episode
cry.
because I will start bawling my eyes out. It's awful. But yeah, I'm going to include some of them on the newsletter, but I will read a few here. One of the craziest ones is like exactly 10 years apart, a death happened in the exact same attraction, which
Oh,
I
shit.
thought was very interesting. June 1973 and June 1983. The exact same story, too. Teenagers died in the Rivers of America attraction in Disneyland, both after violating the rules. It was fault of their own. In the first incident, an 18-year-old and his brother stayed in the park after closing. This is the 1973 one. They were able to sneak by and hide and like get past all the workers, and one of the teenagers drowned. When attempting to cross the river, the other one did try to save them, but the like kind of rapids going on in there just, it wasn't safe. So he ended up having to go back to the shore and wasn't able to save his friend. So one of the teenagers drowned and passed away.
It sucks because the water is like 6 feet deep there.
Right. It's just like the rapids were
It was
so
enough to take them under.
yeah, take you under.
So then 10 years later, 1983, the exact same month, a boy stole a rubber emergency raft from a cast-only area. Again, just like trying to be funny and get away with something, only to tip over and drown. Again, just because it tipped over, couldn't find his way up to the surface, and sadly drowned. But I can't get over that they were exactly 10 years apart.
Yeah, that
It was
almost
really,
seems like kismet.
yeah, like what? What was going on there? So that was very sad and bizarre. Then a year later, in 1984, a woman named Dolly Young was riding the Matterhorn bobsleds. She was 48 years old. Sweet
In
Dolly.
Disneyland,
Yes.
the one that I've ridden.
Yes. The very Matterhorn that you've been on. Her seatbelt became unfastened during the ride. And the weird thing is, no one knows why. If she unfastened it or if it was a malfunction, but it somehow came undone. And I mean, this was in the 80s. Obviously, they've upped their safety since then. But Dolly Young plummeted to the track below. When it became unfastened, she fell out, plummeted down below, was hit by another car, and dragged along the rails before the
Oh.
ride was eventually stopped. It is unclear again how her seatbelt became unfastened, but safe to say the ride was closed for a significant amount of time to investigate what was going on with the safety system, and they increased their safety and fixed the
My
seatbelts obviously
word.
from there because of this event, which is unfortunate that it wasn't that secure before, but I can't even imagine what her body must have looked like by the
Good
time
Lord.
she was dragged for that long.
Well, yeah, you think about the people in the other.
I was
True.
just thinking the people that witnessed it, because she fell down below and hit like another train going by. I guess they weren't trains. They're whatever you would
Logs.
call the collection of
They're
bobsleds
Yeah.
bobsleds, yeah.
Oh,
put
they're
together.
bobsleds.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Awful, 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 gruesome. More recently, in 2007, a teenager died on the Rock and Roller Coaster at Disneyland Paris.
No. Oh, Paris. Who cares?
I know.
I haven't been on that
Who cares
one.
about that? I haven't ridden that one. It is weird to think when it's a ride you've been on. I do agree.
I'm kidding.
This one doesn't seem to be the fault of Disneyland. When the ride stopped, this teenage girl just became unconscious. I don't know if it was just, what do they call it? The G-force when you're on the roller coaster? Is that a word?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
a thing? But she was unconscious. Like her friends were, trying to revive her. Park medics rushed to the scene and an ambulance was called, but it was too late.
So
that
she
was
just like
very
passed
sad.
out on the
She
ride?
just passed out, but like never came back to life. Like it wasn't just, oh, I fainted. It
She
seemed
must have
like she was like almost
asphyxiated.
dead
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
So
there's-
it was bizarre.
some of those are sad where it's like you just had something that you didn't know about. And
Yeah.
Yeah, an underlying condition that you
Yeah.
had no idea about. Yeah, it's so unfortunate. And especially with this, because some of the other deaths that I didn't include is because there were some older folks who went on rides and had these
which
similar
is like,
situations.
listen,
They're like, okay.
it happens.
But this was a young teen, so that was very sad. But cast members are not immune to the dangers of the park either. In 1974, an employee named Debbie Stone was crushed to death between a rotating wall and a permanent theater wall in the America Sings attraction, also in Disneyland. There was a stationary wall that was just part of the theater, and then the wall that is spinning around, taking you to the next areas, and the attraction had been open for only a week, so they're thinking she was either just like not trained properly, or it was just an honest misstep because they were figuring things out. But she thought she had a chance to squeeze between the walls. It was like a break in one of the songs, but right as she was crossing, the rotating wall started to turn and she got crushed.
How horrifying.
So they closed it down for only 2 days, which I was sort of like, maybe give it like a second. But they closed it down for 2 days to fix that issue so it would never happen again. I'm guessing they were able to put something in place that if someone accidentally started to step, it would stop automatically and pause. So they were able to fix that, and it was never able to happen again. But another cast member in Walt Disney World, a cast member playing Pluto in the daily afternoon parade, Share a Dream Come True in 2004, was unfortunately run over by one of the parade floats.
Damn.
His name was Javier Cruz, age 38. He had worked at Walt Disney World for 8 years, was a father of 2, and he was struck just before entering public view, thank God, that like no spectators had to see. But it was about to come into Frontierland. It's unclear if he accidentally fell or just, he walked at just the wrong time and was knocked over.
Ran over him on purpose.
Or there was total drama.
I was going to say, did he have drama with anyone?
He was pushed, actually. He was pushed by... I'm like, who would Pluto have drama with? Goofy?
Goofy. He'd be like, why do you get to talk and I don't? We're both dogs.
Pushed him down. So he unfortunately fell in front of that. The accident led to, do you call it OSHA or is it just OSHA?
No, you say OSHA.
Occupational. I thought so. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They had to assess a fine to Disney for this, and, it was under investigation for a long time, but I don't think much came out of it besides that fine. But poor Javier.
Yeah, no shit.
That was an unfortunate one. Also, I'm going to include the other deaths that I have on our newsletter because a lot of them get pretty dark, but there were also some fascinating injuries that I thought were also worth mentioning. They weren't deaths,
I did come across one where an electrician at Disneyland Paris did die in Phantom Manor.
Ooh.
Phantom Manor.
I think that's the only death in a Haunted Mansion attraction that I'm aware of.
That at least has been verified because there's so many urban legends about people dying on the Haunted Mansion. I know that it is a popular place for people to attempt to spread ashes.
Yes, I was going to talk about that as well a little bit, but a lot of people use Haunted Mansion, and it's like, I can tell you now, don't do it because they immediately stop the ride and they send a crew to vacuum it up. So it's like, wouldn't you rather know that their ashes are not just in a vacuum bag? Like, don't risk
dumpster in Anaheim.
Exactly. Like they will immediately, a cleaning team comes in, the ride is shut down, everything. So, okay, some crazy injuries. It's not always a fatality, but it's still rough. In 1983, an 18-year-old man fell off of Space Mountain and was paralyzed. Whoa. So that's awful. In September 2000, a 4-year-old boy fell out of the Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin ride and suffered serious internal injuries, cardiac arrest, and brain damage after being dragged underneath the car for most of the ride. Somehow did not pass away, but very sad. He still had a lot of medical problems, obviously, from it. And part of the reason that he sustained even worse injuries is because it took a really long time for anyone to call emergency personnel. I guess nobody knows the exact timing of the incident. There's a lot of hearsay, but it seems like it was almost an hour before anybody came and started doing medical work on him. He was just kind of being held by his parents and onlookers who were trying to help the situation. But medical personnel took a very long time to get there, leading Disney to review and change their policies, thank God, after this event and say, we have to get to things faster.
Well,
we have to have better emergency
system. Like you said, it was internal injuries and brain damage.
Yeah.
So it might not have been apparent that something was wrong with the child. It might have been something where it's like, something like maybe he hit his head. Like, what?
Okay.
Yeah.
I do agree with that, except for the fact that he was dragged under the car.
I would have called the medical officials, but I'm just saying,
someone.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
Yes.
Here. Yeah.
No, you are absolutely correct in that instance. It's But yes, it didn't look good. Luckily, they changed their policies after that, as they freaking should. Unfortunately, it was too late for this child who, yes, did not die on Disney premises, but in January 2009, because of his injuries and the different health issues that he sustained after this, he did pass away. That one was very sad. California Adventure, which is one of my favorite places to be in the world, unfortunately, has had some bad accidents, such as California Screamin', the Incredicoaster, as it's known today. No, it will always be California Screamin' in my head. It malfunctioned, and one of the trains rear-ended another, sending 15 guests to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
This was July 29th, 2005.
Like my worst nightmare.
Horrible. There were 48 people total aboard, so, I mean, thank God that it was only 15. Not that that makes it any better, but, like, could have been so much worse. So one train hit the other just hard enough that they all had to go to the hospital. And on March 10th, 1998, a 5-year-old boy was seriously injured when his foot became wedged between the passenger car's running board and the edge of the platform after the train temporarily paused before pulling into the unloading area on California Screamin'. All of the toes on his left foot required amputation. Oh. Disneyland has since obviously made improvements to the ride that would not allow that to happen if a limb was able to stick out. The family claims that the park would not acknowledge the accident as the reason for doing this pain to their boy. They never took ownership of it, didn't pay for any of his medical bills, did not give them any sort of settlement.
What year was this? 1998?
1998. And they just kind of had to live their lives with all of his toes being amputated as it being their fault, which he is the one to stick his limbs out, but also he was a 5-year-old boy, so.
Cool. Well, I will never go to a amusement park again.
Nope. Terrifying.
I have to give you a nerd commentary.
Nerd alert.
California Adventure was not open in 1998.
All right.
The rest of my stories I'm going to include on the newsletter. They're unfortunately the darker, more depressing ones, but that's usually kind of my shtick on the newsletter, so it fits. Ooh. 1998 was correct. It was Big Thunder Mountain.
Oh.
I literally just put in like 5-year-old boy foot and it said Big Thunder Mountain. Unfortunately, one of the articles misquotes it as California Screamin', but this one seems to be correct because I see 2 links leading to it. So yes, Big Thunder Mountain, amputated toes. Goodbye. That's it.
All right, time for the big kahuna. Alex, let's take this episode home.
Okay, so this would, of course, not be an episode talking about the rides that are most relevant and iconic to keep it weird if we didn't talk about the potentially greatest Disney attraction or greatest theme park ride of all time.
Haunted Mansion?
The Haunted Mansion.
Oh, God, it's so good.
Yes, I love it so much.
It's so good. The story, the world building.
Halloween and Christmas are always the best times to be on it.
Well,
Disagree, but go on.
Okay.
Okay, Ashley.
It's just my opinion.
It's just one woman's opinion.
One woman's opinion, please. Just because I
For anyone who
Nightmare
doesn't
Before
know,
Christmas.
if you've ever been to Disneyland or Disney World during Halloween or Christmas, when they change over for Halloween, they basically change the whole ride into Nightmare Before Christmas, which is really wonderful. But I just have such a soft spot for the original classic ride that,
again,
like,
to each their own.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But the Haunted Mansion is another ride that has history to it that I think is super interesting and kind of, it's nice to have the background into why it is so unique and why it has had the impact that it had.
Yeah.
The Haunted Mansion was part of Walt's plans for his park from the beginning.
Love that.
And in 1951, the very first sketches for what at the time was called Mickey Mouse Park and was just going to be built on a strip of land across the street from the Burbank studio.
Nice.
Included a nice little church and a graveyard and a Victorian haunted house up on the hill. But obviously, based on his filmography and the films that he made, Walt did really like scary things and liked
haunted woods and haunted homes and eerie.
He liked tapping into fears. That was a part of all the movies he made. So Walt knew he always wanted to have a classic haunted house in his park, but Disneyland opened in 1955 without the Haunted Mansion. In 1957, Walt tapped one of his animators, Ken Anderson, to begin developing this haunted house concept. And around the same time, Walt Disney came up with the idea of adding a land to his park that was built and themed all around New Orleans.
Yeah.
And creating New Orleans
we
Square.
love it.
At the time, initial plans for this land included a wax museum that would become ultimately Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
That makes so much sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right?
But also the wax museum would have been really cool.
But also, I would have taken a wax museum
I know.
in New
sure.
Orleans Square, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So it was originally, the idea was a Victorian, which I believe that's what it is at Disney World, right? Is more Victorian, and then Disneyland is the New Orleans sort of.
Yeah, I think architecturally you would still call the Disneyland version Victorian.
Oh, really?
Yes. And the Disney World version, I forget what style you would call it. But
I guess I always looked at the Disneyland version as more like a plantation.
Yeah.
It
does come off that way.
For
Yeah.
sure.
100%.
I think there's connections between those styles. And so Walt initially was calling this a retirement home for ghosts, was how he was
I love it.
That's
referring
really
to
fun.
it from the beginning. And the initial designs that this artist Ken Anderson made were of a really rundown, old broken windows, like overgrown
The
gardens,
classic haunted
house.
Mhm.
And Walt saw that and he said, no, this is not what I want.
No, this
in
is a
my
home for
Disneyland.
ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to look nice
And
still.
he had a famous quote that said, "We'll take care of the outside, let the ghosts take care of the inside."
I like it.
Disney's like, I even have a wallpaper in mind.
Yeah. I have it all decorated already.
Around the time that Ken Anderson was developing the look of the outside of the attraction, at least he and maybe Walt also, it seems like there's a little bit of discrepancy in this, took a trip to the Winchester Mystery House
Love
up
it.
in San Jose. Lauren, have you ever been there?
No.
No. You've
No.
been there?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Neither of us
I've
have.
been there, guys.
Okay.
What? How have you never told me
Hold
that?
on.
But also, relax. Hold the phone.
We should go before I move.
Oh, one last hurrah.
Yeah.
One last trip. We've talked about it on the cast.
We have
Don't
talked
get us
about it
wrong,
several
but
You
yeah, we
absolutely
haven't
should. The Winchester Mystery House, of course, famous for being built by the wife of the
Man
founder
who
of the
Yes.
Winchester,
made the Winchester
rifles.
rifle.
So she created all of these staircases to nowhere, doors that open to
Nothing.
brick walls,
Yeah.
The
secret
weirdest house
passages.
ever.
She
with the
essentially just
idea-
kept building and building and building inside the home to appease the spirits that haunted her.
Yeah, and
But
potentially
was it her conscience? Will we ever know?
We
Go
will
on.
never know.
No, and what I've always heard is that she wanted to confuse the ghosts,
Yeah.
so they couldn't find her, and like
Which I love that mindset.
Yeah, I
Like,
love
I'm
the
gonna get you
idea.
caught in a maze.
I know. I love
You
the
won't
idea of a
make it.
ghost going up a stairs and be like,
Oh,
wow,
She's gone. I can't.
staircase to nowhere.
It's funny.
So while they kind of set aside the exterior of the house for a little while, this guy, Ken Anderson, began developing stories for what would happen inside. There were a few different ideas that he looked at, one involving a pirate who was killed under unknown circumstances who came back to haunt. Another where the story was that this house had been taken from the South and moved to Disneyland, and no matter what the Disney designers did and changed about the house itself, it always went back to its haunted state.
Creepy. Okay.
There was another version, concept where Walt Disney was going to be your guide through the house himself, so you'd be hearing his
That's
voice.
kind of cool.
Which, yeah, kind of would have been cool. And then the last concept that got the most momentum was the idea of theming it around the story of the Headless Horseman. Again,
Oh,
coming
That would have
back
been a
to
good
our,
time
our
as
boy
well.
Ichabod.
Ichabod.
Yeah.
Ichabod. Remember the frogs?
Yes.
Remember?
Oh, I do.
So creepy. I don't know if I could watch that alone in this house at night.
Oh, it's legit creepy.
About the same time, in 1959, Walt tapped two other people from animation that he loved a lot, a guy named Yale Gracie and a guy by the name of Rolly Crump, who began working on
Rolly
illusions.
Crump?
Rolly
his
Sorry,
name
I
is
just couldn't
Rolly.
sweep past that name.
No,
Okay.
no, we're not going to ignore that.
Rolly Crump.
Wow. Okay.
Nickname?
So Rolly was famous for being like a tinkerer, around the animation studio and around Imagineering, creating a lot of kinetic sculptures, and he had a background in magic that was really great.
Nice.
And Yale was a background and layout artist in animation and had a talent for model making and thinking outside the box. So Walt put these two guys together and said, like,
Make
just
something.
play, have fun.
Make some
so
magic.
they apparently spent like a year just working on different gags and like effects to make cool things for the Haunted Mansion, one of which being the iconic Pepper's Ghost effect, which is essentially an old stage technique where you use a pane of glass and illuminate something on one side of a pane of glass that then when viewed through the pane of glass, kind of you see the reflection of what's on the other side, and it can kind of create a transparent
but you can see
effect.
through it.
Yeah, you can see through. Yeah, exactly.
Which is essentially what's happening in the dance hall.
It's exactly what's happening
which
in
is
the dance hall.
Best part of
Yes.
the ride.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is so
cool.
simple, but
Yeah.
it's
But
so
you
effective.
can't tell what's happening.
Yeah.
Like
No.
you watch it and you're like, how is this
Every
happening?
time it's like Alex has explained it to me, and I will still sit there and say,
You'll
"This is
still
magic."
Look for it.
Yeah,
you'll still
Like,
look
but I
for
don't
it.
see-
Be
yeah,
like,
I don't see
see
those
how they're
details.
making this.
Yeah.
It's so
Which is brilliant.
magical. It looks so good.
So Yale and Rowley set to work and worked in a studio for a year. They love to tell the story of how one night they basically had all of these effects and ghostly effects set up in their office and set an infrared sensor one night before they left for work with the hopes of scaring the cleaning crew
Oh man.
and triggering all of their effects the moment that the janitors entered the room. And they say that they came into work the next day and saw a broom on the floor and were then told, you guys are going to have to clean your own workspace.
That's
Oh my
The
hilarious.
God.
janitors are not coming back.
I also love that I was like, the janitors put in their 2-week notice.
Yeah.
And they didn't show up for their shift.
Didn't make it. My gosh.
Does anyone know why?
Yeah. That's good.
So construction on New Orleans Square started in the meantime in 1961 with the announcements that Pirates of the Caribbean and this haunted house were going to be a part of it. The haunted house itself was built and finished in 1963, but it didn't have a ride in it. There was no ride
was
building.
just an
It was
empty
just the
shell.
house. And they still didn't know what they were going to do. At the time, all of the Imagineers got pulled into working on the 1964 World's Fair in New York,
Oh, okay.
which is where Disney created most famously It's a Small World for Pepsi and UNICEF at that pavilion.
Ooh.
Great moments with Mr. Lincoln for ladies.
The President's Hall of Presidents.
President. I have nothing.
The Illinois Pavilion.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like, it's Lincoln.
That's exactly what I
Come
was
on.
We should have known because it's Lincoln.
Is it
and
because
we are
it's
the
Lincoln?
land of Lincoln.
We
yeah,
do
sorry,
love
that was
Lincoln. Yeah, sorry.
So there was no time to work on the Haunted Mansion. As everybody came back from the World's Fair, Ken Anderson moved back to animation. Walt Disney tapped into two more animators, one guy by the name of Mark Davis, who was famous for being like a gag man, a humorous guy, and Claude Coates, who was a background artist. Mark Davis believed that this haunted house should be really funny and lean into the humor of ghosts.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Which we
Claude
love.
Coates thought we should make this dark and scary and lean into all of that. So the two of them butted heads. And even it's said that Walt enjoyed putting people together who had opposing opinions, or even at times,
Did he just want to see the drama?
yeah, I think he did. Or he even put people together who hated themselves, or not hated themselves.
Who really just couldn't handle being themselves.
Really insecure.
But also, sometimes really great stuff
Comes
comes
out of those
that.
opposing
Yeah.
viewpoints.
That
Mhm.
tension.
Because, I mean, you can see it when you ride the Haunted Mansion. You
gonna
can
say,
see
you
the
see
funny
both
things, and you can
sides.
see the really, really scary stuff, and you can see the dark stuff.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of both.
Exactly. So
But it could have been a mess.
they were trying to balance everything. There was also the added factor of our guy Rolly Crump,
Rolly
who
Crump.
during this development was making sketches for a lot of just random concepts he had. One of it, which was this scary, creepy chair that had a face and talked to you, a
Ew.
bat chandelier, man-eating plants in a
Yeah, I like
conservatory,
that. Yeah.
and a candle man who was made of dripping wax.
Okay.
and
Don't like
lit
that.
with flames.
That's not terrifying.
Really, if you look at the sketches, and I could show you them later, it really does feel like almost like Tim Burton-esque
Yeah.
in its concepts. And Walt really liked it. He liked all the sketches. Everybody who saw it thought there was something to it, but they all thought this is just really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it fits. And so one day Walt came to Rolly and said, I've got it. I figured it out. We're going to call it the Museum of the Weird. And this is going to be a space like alongside the ride itself that you can walk into while you're waiting to get on and just explore for as long as you want and look at all the details and then get on the main ride itself.
What a great idea.
That didn't happen. Did that happen?
You're right.
Yeah, okay. I was
Spoiler
like,
alert.
I was
It
like,
didn't
have I
happen.
fucking missed this?
I'm sad that
Like,
it didn't
why?
get off the ground
I
because
know.
it's a great
I'm
idea.
sorry. Maybe it still could.
Museum of the Weird is like us. It's speaking to
Yeah,
us.
they made it for us.
Exactly. But in 1966, Walt Disney died, throwing the project into even more chaos and uncertainty as people were trying to figure out what the storyline was,
Yeah.
what's the balance between humor and scary. But in the midst of that uncertainty, there's an Imagineer named Bob Gurr, who was kind of the mechanics guy. Now I'm really talking too much about names of Imagineers, and I'm sorry. But he had the idea to utilize some technology they had made for the World's Fair and turn it into this ride system where you would ride around in a sort of a
Doom buggy.
a buggy, yes, that could rotate and focus your attention at certain scenes in a really cinematic way, and also have a really high throughput, because at that time they weren't sure, is this going to be a walk-through attraction? Is it going to be a ride? And so they came up with the idea to use this system that was called an Omnimover and painted black and dubbed the Doom Buggies, which really helped to click or helped to give them some more momentum. And there was also then a writer by the name of ExtraTERROrestrial.
What? X-Atencio?
I'm not
You're
sure.
just
I
making
don't
up
remember
names
what
now.
his actual first name is, but he just went by X.
Okay.
Oh, mysterious.
And he
The
also
artist
wrote
formerly
the
known
script.
as.
Yes. He also wrote the script for Pirates of the Caribbean and wrote the song Yo Ho, Yo Ho, A Pirate's
that's
Life for
fine.
Me.
Oh, that's one of my
Um,
favorite songs.
So X was brought in to work on the story for the haunted house, and he pulled in everything, brought it all together, balancing the scary stuff with the funny,
Yeah.
utilizing the Doom Buggy, really leading into the ghost host narrator
Mhm.
Which we love.
as the common thread, pulling it all together. And then also he worked alongside a composer, Buddy Baker, to write the lyrics for the song Grim Grinning Ghosts,
Mhm.
which is, of course, now iconic as the theme song for the ride.
Oh,
And
yes.
inadvertently kind of created this 3-act structure where you go in and you're in the stretching room. It's really pretty scary.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
With an organ going, and you see the ghost host hung from the ceiling
Yeah, he killed himself.
after
That's pretty
committing
dark.
suicide. Yeah.
I'm surprised that
Um,
that's still in the ride, to be
I
honest.
agree. Showing him hanging up there, it's
Yes.
always like, are we
There's
we're
always
still okay?
My way.
There are.
Uh-huh.
And then you go into the ride itself, and at the time when you go into the seance room, that's when
Madame
Madame
Leota.
Leota,
Mhm.
who was played by an Imagineer
Jennifer Tilly.
named, well, in the movie, thank you. Okay.
Kidding.
In the ride, she's played by an Imagineer named
Really?
Leota Toombs, actually. Her last name was legit Toombs,
Who
and she
are
played
these people
Madame
with
Leota,
these names?
which is awesome. But at that point, then the ghosts come out and
Really
it
take
really
over the
gets
joint.
into like
Yeah.
the Yale Gracie stuff, like the
Mhm.
Pepper's ghost in the ballroom and the creepy stuff in the attic, before you then leave the attic and go into the graveyard,
Yeah.
where it's
And
just
everybody's
becomes a
singing.
swinging party
Yeah.
and silly gags and things
So
jumping
fun.
out at you, and the hitchhiking ghosts
Mhm.
that follow
Mhm.
you home. And it's really like so many crazy different things that shouldn't work together,
But they
but
do.
somehow
boy,
it
they do.
does. Yeah.
Do you believe the storyline that you actually end up dying when you jump out of the window?
I was reading something that talked about potentially that flight out the window having meaning.
Yeah.
I forget what it was, but ultimately I think the fact that the ride kind of ends with the ghosts like
Saying hurry back.
saying hurry back, and
Don't
like
forget
these
your
ghosts are going
death
to
certificate.
follow you home. I think kind of
Debunks the fact
that
that
a little
you
bit.
died. Because it is kind of interesting that you like fall or leap or whatever out of an attic window
Yeah.
and into a graveyard, and now all of a sudden things are directly reacting
Yeah.
with you in the graveyard.
I know it's a theory that
And like
makes
there's
sense.
the only human that you see on the ride, which is the graveyard keeper or
Guy
whatever.
with the really skinny dog.
Yeah, who's like shaking
Yeah.
and holding a lamp, and it almost seems like he's scared of you coming
right.
through.
The ghost that is
Yeah,
entering.
and it's the first time you're talked to really. I mean, I guess Madame Leota, but not really. She's just sort of talking to the room.
right.
But like you're the
It
first
does
time.
feel
It's the
like
first time
suddenly
they're like
you're
singing to
part of the
you.
ghosts.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like, oh, now you're a ghost.
I don't hate that theory at all. I've always thought it made
Yeah.
sense.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, like you were saying, I think the key element really is like how just insanely great the script is and the
So good.
narration is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when hinges creak in doorless chambers, and strange and frightening sounds echo through the halls, whenever candlelights flicker, where the air is deathly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight. I mean, come on.
Oh,
It's
man,
perfect.
it's
It's like
good.
poetry.
It really is.
I
It really
love
is.
it.
That's the key thing that really pulls it all together. Finally, 6 years after the house itself had been finished being built, in 1969, the Haunted Mansion opened, 3 years after Walt had passed away, and a week later, Disneyland set a single-day attendance record
Damn.
because there
Wowie.
were 82,000 people there or something in one day. And then probably most famously, a few years ago, added the Hatbox Ghost,
Mhm.
which
So
actually
cool.
did exist
I
in
was
the
gonna
first
say, that
few
was
months
original.
of the ride. Yeah,
Mhm.
but the effect never worked because they couldn't get the lighting right,
Ah.
and so they pulled it out. And it kind of people at some point people were like, "Did
What
this
happened to the
really
Hatbox
exist,
Ghost?"
or am I
Yeah.
imagining
Is that
it?"
a fever
It's a
dream?
Mandela effect
Yeah.
situation.
Exactly. That's what people didn't know because there's no video.
Yeah.
True.
Another version of the Haunted Mansion opened at Hong Kong Disneyland. In this case, it was called Mystic Manor, and didn't have the ghost story because of differences in kind of how ghosts are seen in
Yeah.
traditional Chinese culture. So in this case, there is a devious monkey who finds
Oh, boy.
and finds an enchanted music box, opens the enchanted music box,
Oh,
and
it's
brings
like
to
magic
life
comes-
everything
yeah,
in the
okay.
house
Right, I'm
comes
sure
to
that's
life
fun.
Like
and is
Beauty and the
playful.
Beast
Yeah. a little
style.
bit.
Kind of. Of course, the legacy and impact now of the Haunted Mansion is well known and well loved. Welcome, foolish mortals. Just gives you goosebumps.
Ooh, it sure does. I love it. I love the Haunted Mansion. Okay, that's all the time we have this week for Keep It Weird. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our show. And thank you so much, Alex, for joining us and teaching us oh so much about Disney rides.
Thank you for letting me just
Nerd out.
Just
for
totally
an hour.
nerd
live
out.
my podcast dreams.
This
Talk
was your
about
big
Disney
moment.
rides. Do you have anything that you want to plug for yourself? Do you want listeners to follow you anywhere? Do you have any upcoming projects? Do you have anything close to your heart that you want people to check out?
No, I don't. Hopefully.
I have nothing going on.
No, I don't. I
I
have
do not.
nothing. It's still COVID. No one has anything going on.
Nothing.
I mean, your biggest plug should be go check out Illuminate on
Oh, yeah,
YouTube.
yeah. Go to YouTube. Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Even your Instagram's fucking difficult.
I'm sorry.
I know that it's like your name or whatever,
It's
but
his
like
middle
no one has that
name.
name.
Nobody understands it.
I know.
RANDLEV.
Randlev.
I
Randlev.
thought
At-
it would be cool.
It is cool.
No, we'll tag you in some stuff so people know where to find you. So, but thank you so much for coming on our show and for supporting us for 5 years
We love you.
without coming on the show.
you did support and listen, and you were great in other ways, but happy to have you finally on
Yeah.
the show.
Me too. Hopefully now people won't think I'm a monster.
Definitely not.
Just busy. As usual, please follow us at Keep It Weirdcast on social media. If you want to help produce the show, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/keepitweirdpodcast, and donate $1, $5, or $10. And in return, you'll get bonus episodes, a monthly newsletter, discounts on merch, and a shout out on the show. And if you just want to rep your favorite pod, head to our Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/keepitweirdpodcast. Alex? What's our sign off this week?
I should have been ready for this.
Everyone says it,
Everyone
and
says
no
that.
one's ready for it.
That's the best
That's the beauty of it.
Hurry back.
Hurry back. Don't forget your death certificate.
And
Keep it weird.
Can you say keep it weird?
But weird.
Just keep it weird.
Could be weird.
Say Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse.